Welcome to Polymath Counselling. You're welcome to like and subscribe, comment and share. So, StormInATeacup is my own model of supervision to focus on how counsellors and others in caring capacities can focus on their own self-care and balance in their lives. As counsellors in the BACP, we have to have supervision for at least 90 minutes each month, and that's to unpack and review what's going on for us both inside the counselling room or the therapy room and outside it with a supervisor. Without this, we may be more prone to making some mistakes with clients, perhaps getting close to burnout with a heavy caseload of clients, or not fulfilling our full potential in our caring career and our own lifelong learning, which can mean our own research too. So here's StormInATeacup. This is my model and it's kindly sketched and edited by one of my daughters. There are 6 points of focus, and the final 6th perspective is the most important for all counsellors and people in a caring role. Here we go. The organisation. This is important in how it forms the foundations of supervision and of counselling in practice. You won't feel safe if the organisation does not have robust support. If this is taken away, then the counsellor, and more importantly the client, can feel figuratively and literally as if the bottom has fallen off. Ideally, the organisation support will include multiple factors, such as price of sessions, timeframes, support and available managers, robust safeguarding policies, smooth referrals, a stepped framework perhaps, appropriate assessments to stream comorbidity and multiple issues from some clients, and try and swerve those and stream those towards more qualified or more experienced therapists. Also, it might have a look into shorter waiting lists. The clients won't feel metaphorically held by either you, the counsellor, nor the counselling service if there are any holes in the base. The theory. This is your training. This is your modality and your approach to therapy. It also includes your belief systems. By belief systems, it checks that if we lean towards tabula rasa, which is offering a purist or non-judgmental approach to all clients, or potentially other leanings towards innate goodness or original sin. If the theory or belief system is too thick or cumbersome, or if we use too many jargon terms with some clients, there will be no space inside for the client to express their own disclosures, their own presenting issues. And there won't be any space for clients to develop their own autonomy. This may indicate that a wider understanding of counselling theory would benefit both the client and the counsellor, and therefore a wider vessel to offer space for multiple issues and experiences from the client. The opposite would be equally negative, because if the theory is too thin or flimsy or brittle, then the client won't be able to put their trust in being metaphorically held by the theory or the service or the therapy, or by you, the counsellor. There is something to be said for the decision making when a counsellor chooses which theory to uphold and to utilise on a daily basis, because you'll know if your theory matches your belief system. If you have any strong beliefs, they should be aligned to your client and durable enough and broad enough to enable you to hold the client within reason. What I mean by this is that we can check our understanding of the theory and how to put this into practice when we meet clients and their presenting issues. There is something to be said about confidentiality here, and that can be illustrated in our minds by imagining if the theory was transparent. So if the cup was transparent, how would we feel as the client in a session if everything discussed was seen by and heard by and disclosed to others? Imagine that, a transparent cup. So this illustrates how important confidentiality and boundaries are there in keeping the theory and the client's sessions held within this opaqueness from the outside world. It is just the counsellor and perhaps their supervisor who should get a glimpse into the client's issues from perhaps a bird's eye view from above. As counsellors, we are human and we can have discriminations. So a counsellor who has a belief system which is in direct opposition to a client's issues, they will struggle to contain that, and therefore it would most likely benefit the client to get an onward referral instead. For example, if an alcohol service requires a client to be teetotal, an absolute abstinence from alcohol, then it will make it difficult or incongruent for a client to continue drinking and remain in the service. So they will spill over the edge if they haven't already, if they're not willing or if they're not yet able to be teetotal. So it helps to know that the client's issues and the clients themselves will be held by their surrounding theory and the vessel and that cup. The responses. These are the actual responses when we greet and transact with the client. This includes on the telephone and texts and emails before the first session, and it can mean in the therapy room and between sessions as well. It's important that we do not make too many responses and make the sessions all about us and how great we are to have a handle on the situation and handle the client's issues, because that would make it a bit more rocky and the client might immediately be uncomfortable with our talking too much and an imbalance in that power dynamic. So this is where we can try and maintain at least a minimum of presence in the therapeutic room, which would mean giving some verbal utterances or nodding here and there, perhaps mirroring the client's movements so the client knows that we're with them and following them and in their frame of reference, as it's called, and we do have a handle on the situation. If our responses are not equal to the ebbing and flowing of a client's issues, some issues may spill over, and we can learn to mirror in an equal and opposite way to the clients, where we can be accurate and balanced. With our responses, it's also relevant with contracts and contracting and how the initial session and the client's counter responses can affect the session. And these can sometimes dictate what will proceed in the following sessions. So our responses can be duly our grip and our immediate accountability in the session and how we respond to the clients, not just using our own approach, but integrated or classic or purist, but also our experiences and our real self in the session. And we can try and maintain a good and safe and comfortable grip on the handle. The client's issues. These can be the most changeable factor in the whole model. We can be reminded that the client is only with us, the counsellor, for 1 hour out of 168 hours in the week. That means there might be multiple external factors which can change those issues that the client brings in each session. The client's issues may have been boiling hot to handle for maybe hours previous, or maybe weeks, months, or even years. So that means we need to be careful with the heat there. On occasion, a client may react in a session to a new thought or realization, and it might cause confusion or upset for both individuals in the room. That's called abrasion, where the client experiences are recurring and they churn up some feelings from before, or maybe some actually stronger feelings than before, and that can be very difficult to metaphorically hold for the counsellor. Clients often feel confused and have mixed feelings, and they might feel disorientated in the first or the earliest sessions, and they might be the stormiest ones so far. This is where the client can build up trust and pace and autonomy in the sessions. Alternatively, some clients may have issues with endings, so they may seem more upset or more tumultuous in the penultimate or the final sessions as they build up a concern or a fear that they might be repeating a pattern from their past with a difficult ending. If we focus our vision solely on the client's issues, we ourselves as counsellors might get disorientated from the transference of this storm from the client onto us, and that's where we might lose our balance and a balanced perspective. Some clients' issues feel like they're really powerful and mesmerizing or really too hot. It can feel like a burning sensation either during the session or afterwards, so we do need to be aware when to get some support from others and when to take some time for ourselves to self-soothe before we can see another client. This helps to prevent burnout, sometimes called compassion fatigue, and a new term called Zoom fatigue, but other remote working providers are available. We are counsellors to help and support clients and to understand their issues more with time and space and this holding. However, infrequently, shame, guilt, fear, anger or sadness, these are often described as taboo feelings, they may be suppressed, and they may suppress the hidden issue deeper within the storm. The counsellor. This is where we need to be aware of our own self-care and our own strength of character to understand when and where that we might feel shaky or scared before, during or after a therapy session, and trying to hold the client's issues. Developing this self-awareness and noticing whether we feel thick-skinned or thin-skinned, so more sensitive and susceptible to hurt or heat or pressure, that's essential. The source of this awareness is having our own personal therapy during our qualifications or earlier, to know thyself. Sometimes we might not feel strong, and therefore we don't have a strong grip or a big presence with lots of responses in a therapy session. But this can actually be facilitative for the client, because they might wobble at first, but it will give them some time to be able to self-soothe and to encounter some permission giving for themselves. So they give themselves permission to be wobbly, permission to be tearful, and to have a session where they might weep uncontrollably for a certain period of time, within reason. And that can help them to build up their autonomy. Here we can offer silence and sometimes a lack of responses, but if that's not harmful and not neglective for the clients, then that's fine. In equal measure, we are people too, and we do have 167 hours of the week before we meet that same client again. So what are we doing for ourselves? What are we doing which is empathic or kind or facilitative or sustainable for ourselves? The counsellor is also part of the supervision, and you are your own gatekeeper too. This mixes into the core conditions of congruence and honesty, because you will have some problems if you don't develop your confidence and if you don't learn to trust yourself. This is what can happen for some counsellors. Counsellors can ask themselves the competency question. Do I feel as though I'm close to burnout? Am I kidding myself that I'll be fine with a vulnerable or a suicidal client when I actually feel shaky myself? We also need to have unconditional positive regard for ourselves and an empathy for ourselves as well. That's in order to understand that dynamic. What we can do is ask these questions of ourselves. Can I maintain this client's issues without harming myself or them in a session? Or do we need another hand to steady myself? That other hand can either come from other people or it can come from ourselves. By other people I mean colleagues or family or friends or someone in another capacity, or it can also mean ourselves or our supervisor's hand as well. Some counsellors only have one hand, figuratively and literally, so that can remind us that the decision is in our hand. The supervision perspective. This is where we focus in a supervision session, and it's also the most descriptive and not general. Supervision is essentially a luxury afforded to counsellors by themselves to take care of themselves. It's permission giving, and it's a regular part of the course requirements. And this is where we ask for any extra insight into different dynamics at play when we're in the counselling session and outside them too. What the supervisor's perspective does is to focus on the smaller details where we can exact and make some change. This is where we can empower ourselves as counsellors to make smaller movements, and this is where there's more flexibility for change too. I would propose that by looking at the top aspect of the counsellor's hand and the thumb will show us how we are holding up the client's issues and how balanced we feel, because we can see the whole nail, and we can check if things are off kilter or off balance much easier when we have this heightened perspective. If we are overly focused on the client's issues, then we can soon realise that we're not in control at all of the client's storm. Because of our limited input, it's only 1 hour out of 168 in the week. There's also external factors influencing what they might bring to our counselling sessions. If we are overly focused on the organisational problems and checking for holes underneath, then we're likely to lose focus on the client's issues, and the liquid and the storm may spill out, and it might scald them or us as well, and it might have some impact on us. We can actually physically explore this useful model of supervision with Storm in a Teacup by actually making a cup of tea very slowly and exploring the balance and the heat and the weight and the dynamics and the actual prettiness of a tea when it is unstirred, when you can see the storm. To absorb that metaphor properly, I would suggest that you then carry your cup of tea and walk about a bit, move about a bit if you can, within reason, so you don't scald yourself. Whilst you're doing that, have a go at focusing solely on your own thumbnail. I would hope that you find a good balance and control over most aspects of that teacup, and subsequently the client's issues will remain in the teacup, i.e. the tea will remain in the cup. Because when focusing on your thumbnail, that makes it less likely for the client's issues to spill over and onto your hand or onto the floor. Whereas if you were to carry the teacup around the room and focus way too much on the client's issues and focus on the uncontrollable storm and the liquid and the tea in the cup, or any of the other aspects 1 to 5 mentioned above, if you focus on those other than the top or the highest perspective, then the liquid might be shaken more and possibly spill out and over. This is Storm in a Teacup. It's a model by myself, Luke McCarry, and it's a simile for counsellors to look after themselves, particularly when you're in supervision, and also by focusing on the smaller details of your own practice. That can help you to empower yourself, and also to offer yourself the 3 core person-centred conditions. This is by simply following and focusing on the thumbnail. Because this is Polymath Counselling, I would hope that this model of supervision could be easily transferable from a counselling environment to many others. First example would be a business environment, so we can replace some keywords like changing the word counsellor to manager, and also changing the words client issues into employees issues. Another model, which is universal, is that we could replace the word counsellor for editor, as in an editor of a publishing firm, and for them to focus on their own self-care and balance while supporting a new novelist. That would be to help the novelist to develop their own manuscript. That's just 2 examples here, but ideally it could be transferred to any place of work or where there's a transaction between like a teacher and a student, or a mentor and a mentee, or a caring person and someone who needs that support. Thank you for watching. If you liked it, please share and comment, like and subscribe, and check out my other videos on Instagram too. I also dedicate this model of supervision to everyone who has encouraged me to learn and develop and take care of myself, which does include my original supervisors, Mum and Dad. Thank you. Love you.